What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Arnies. We are two guys ready for the next Shyamalan twist. I'm Matt Johnson, and speaking of, I think The Wind might be the greatest villain in film history.
And I'm Keith Baker, and I would not pass that zoo's inspection.
I don't know how they did it. I think we're going to get into that. I think right now, though, people are listening to our intro, and they're like, what the fuck movies are they about to talk about? But on today's show, we're returning to a format that we've been kind of itching to get back to for a while. I don't even remember exactly when the last time we did it was. I mean, was that like early last year, maybe? It was the first and only time we've done it.
Summer last year, I think.
Maybe, yeah. So it's been a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're back to doing what we're just going to be calling, I guess, going forward, the shitty movie night. We watched a couple of movies that don't have the best reputations, and we're going to decide which is better or worse, I guess, based on the title, whichever you prefer. Last time, we somehow compared and contrasted John Carter and Michael Bay's Ambulance. So Keith and I knew we wanted to do shitty movie night. You know, whenever we did it last time with Austin, we all had a great time. He's still going to be out for a couple weeks. But we were like, hey, you know, this might be a good time. There's like a big gap in the schedule. Let's throw a shitty movie night in there. But we realized this is really tricky because the last time this happened, it happened very organically. We were on an episode, we were talking about Taylor Kitsch for some reason. One of us referred to him as John Carter. And then I think Austin was the one that then somehow brought Ambulance into the conversation. And then by the end of that recording, we were like, you know, it'd be funny if next week we just reviewed those two movies. So this time, Keith and I were really like scratching our heads. We were like, how do we kind of replicate that feeling? Because you want the title of the episode to be funny, Keith. I think that's something we realized is you want the title of this to be enticing. You wanted to say shitty movie night and then say two movies that would never be paired together, but are bad in their own right, maybe have some really redeeming / funny qualities. And I think maybe we nailed it, Keith, because today is the shitty movie night for 2008's The Happening and 2011's We Bought a Zoo.
Oh my God.
God, saying that makes me so happy. Now, of course, should we be doing this? Maybe not, but by God, we're going to make it happen. One of these movies is considered one of the worst of the 2000s, I think that's probably fair to say, whenever it came out. And one has a better reputation, I guess, critically, but I think has also become a bit of a laughingstock of sorts over the years. So I think it's going to be kind of a fun comparison here. But yeah, you know what? I think let's skip the banter, Keith. Let's just get right into it.
Yeah.
The first thing I got to ask you is, were you excited about this matchup once we locked it in?
Yeah, I was. Whenever we decided to do another one of these, I think you and I were just... you were like kind of thinking around, like, okay, what could be like a good, like, what's a wild?
I think somehow, I think it branched out. It somehow started from Mark Wahlberg, I want to say. I think he was the catalyst, and I think that led us to The Happening.
Yeah.
And then we were like, we could pair it by like picking a movie with one of his co-stars. And we were like, we talked about The Departed last week in terms of like remakes. And so then we were like, oh, Matt Damon. What's a good Matt Damon movie?
What's a bad Matt Damon movie?
We Bought a Zoo.
Yeah, I was like, I think I Googled bad Matt Damon movies, and the first ones that come up was We Bought a Zoo and then The Wall, I think.
I was thinking about The Wall today. I was like, oh, maybe that would be a good one for the future. But yeah, we have our a couple co-stars from The Departed leading some different movies, and it is kind of perfect in a way. I was thinking about, you know, the John Carter and Ambulance one too. John Carter is infamously considered a bad movie, and then whenever we watched it, we were kind of like, oh, okay, I can see I can see what they were going for. Yeah. The Happening sort of has that too. It's like equally reviled. And then when you watch it, you can kind of go, I guess I get what M. Night Shyamalan was going for. Does that mean it's good? I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying it's kind of interesting to go back and watch it. They have reputations for being bad. Whereas Ambulance, I think we were surprised ourselves. We were like, oh, this actually got like decent critical reviews. But like immediately after it came out, it was like everybody still was making fun of it. And that's kind of We Bought a Zoo. It has decent reviews. But it's like it's such a memed movie. People make fun of it. I remember at the Oscars one year, Jimmy Kimmel went out and like just ridiculed We Bought a Zoo for a whole segment in front of Matt Damon. And you kind of understand why whenever you see clips from it. So in a weird way, I think we kind of organically found a matchup that echoes a little bit of John Carter versus Ambulance.
Yeah. And I think the matchup works better too when it's kind of in two different genres. Like, John Carter, you could say John Carter and Ambulance are both action, but John Carter's more like a sci-fi action, whereas Ambulance is just like a straight up Michael Bay, like in underground LA type action movie. And then we got like this family type movie, We Bought a Zoo, going up against well, I don't even know what you call this movie. The Happening,
Like a
it's
hard
a thriller,
R science fiction thriller movie.
yeah, sci-fi thriller, I guess.
It's weird.
So yeah, I think that's the way to do these shitty movie nights. You got to have them in separate genres, which makes it even.
They have
funnier.
to be wildly different. It helps whenever you read the title, like we said. You want it to like pop. Oh my god, why are people comparing John Carter and Ambulance? Wait, why are people talking about The Happening and We Bought a Zoo in the same sentence?
Yeah,
I think that's what we got to go for. But that leads us in, Keith. I mean, give me some quick initial thoughts. I mean, I guess first let me know if had you seen both of these? I feel like I don't know. I actually don't remember if you had. But then I also want to know what are your initial thoughts on these two?
yeah. I had seen We Bought a Zoo when it first came out. I think I watched it one night with my family, and I think everybody liked it when it first. But I think I was maybe 14, 15 when that came out. And when you're watching a family movie with your family, it's always gonna, it's like okay, it was fun, I guess, with the family. Yeah. It had some heartfelt moments and it was fine.
Yeah.
And I'll get into it in a second how I feel about it now. But with the happening, I don't think I had seen it all the way through ever. I think it was always one of those movies I would just come across like on whatever channel it was playing on, and I would maybe watch like a snippet of it and then change the channel. I just was never really into it. So this was the first time watching it all the way through, and I was texting you as soon as I started it. I was 10 minutes in, and I was laughing my ass off. I was like, I know I shouldn't be laughing because this movie's about people committing suicide, but
I know
there was just so many cringy acting moments and writing moments and weird cutting and weird editing. Everything was just so awkward about the way this movie was cut, and it had some decent actors in there. I mean, you have Zoe Deschanel. We'll get into the cast in a minute, but you have some good performers in there, and they were not used correctly at all. But I was laughing so much throughout The Happening. There's just so many just hilarious, cringy type moments in it. So that's my history. What about you? Have you seen these before?
Yes, I saw We Bought a Zoo for the first time, actually, I think last year randomly. Like at a friend's house, maybe? I think I was like maybe on vacation or something, and for some reason we watched I don't know why we watched it. I guess maybe their family really liked it or something. But I watched it and I was like, yeah, this is fine, I guess. Very just bland, run-of-the-mill movie. Is it offensive? Yeah. No, but almost because it's so bland and cookie-cutter, that ends up being conducive for really funny moments. It's kind of hard to explain. Yeah. But in a scene where Matt Damon just starts yelling at his kid, his eldest kid, and just says like, we bought a zoo because I thought you liked me. I thought this was your dream. Then the son is just like crying. This is your dream. You're just kind of laughing. It's like, I don't know why, but there's just like weird moments like that where it's really funny. And then The Happening was one that I remember like being excited to see when it was coming out. I was like, I guess I would have been 14 or somewhere around there, 13, 14. And at that point, I had started seeing M. Night Shyamalan movies. And I became a fan very quickly. And I was like, oh, here's his new one coming out. I like Mark Wahlberg. I'm excited. But then it got the R rating, and that was a little tricky to sell in my household at that age. So I was like, I guess I'm not going to get to see The Happening. But then, of course, HBO came in clutch months later, and that movie was playing on there all the time, and I recorded it, and I watched it. I mean, what a movie. It is. It's so bad, but it's so hysterical, and there are elements of it where like the premise is so strong that you wonder how they fumbled it, but then by the end it kind of circles back around, and you're like, well, wait, were they trying to make like a not serious movie? Was this intentional? Like, were they going for kind of a campy nature? Yeah. So you're like, wait, maybe The Happening's good, but then you realize it's kind of hard to make a campy movie where the literal premise is about like gruesome R-rated mass suicides that they show on camera. So you get those scenes that for some you literally have to turn away. It's like, wow, that's a lot. You're showing that. That's hard to watch. And then the next scene is just like an old woman asking Mark Wahlberg, "Are you here to kill me?" And his response is, "What? No." So it just goes back and forth from like gruesome R-rated content to like really laugh out loud moments. And I don't think it jives really well, but it makes for an amazing watching experience.
Oh, yeah. Mark Wahlberg's. I think it was his worst performance ever that I've ever seen.
It's got to be up there. It's got to be.
What was happening? It just looked like, as I was watching that movie, it just looked like nobody wanted to be there. Like it's like they were just cashing a check, you know, like, all right, let's just get this over with. It looked like nobody was into this at all.
Zooey Deschanel might be a worse offender, I feel like, in this one. She just looks dazed and confused the whole time.
She really did.
Yeah. All right, well, there's kind of where we're starting from. And over the course of this episode, we have to decide, and there's going to be a lot of parameters. You know, it's like, is We Bought a Zoo objectively better than The Happening? Probably, but which would you give the higher ranking? It's kind of like last week, whenever we talked about Roadhouse 89 versus Roadhouse 24. It's like, you know, whichever one is, like, actually better in quality may not always get the number one spot. So, something to consider. But normally, here's where we would drop the spoiler warning. I don't think we're going to do that because these movies are from decades ago. At least it feels like. So, yeah, if you haven't seen We Bought a Zoo or The Happening and you want to watch those before listening to this episode, this is your last chance to do that because the rest of this episode is going to be us talking full spoilers and somehow trying to compare and contrast, talking pros and cons to figure out, during this shitty movie night, is The Happening or We Bought a Zoo the better movie? All right, everybody, welcome to the bulk of the episode. Let's get the shitty movie night started. Keith, how about you lead us off here with The Happening?
All right, The Happening is directed by M. Night Shyamalan, longtime director, writer, and producer. He has famously created some of the most well-regarded thrillers and mystery films in The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs, and Split, while he has infamously created some painfully bad and head-scratching films in Lady in the Water, After Earth, and The Last Airbender. The movie has another, on paper, great cast like most of his films, with Mark Wahlberg, Zooey Deschanel, and John Leguizamo.
That's right, and The Happening received negative reviews at the time in 2008, but it seems like received better consensus, I guess, in the years since from people who consider it a schlocky B-movie. Whether it actually is, I guess, is up for debate. It is currently sitting at a very low 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. The site's critical consensus is, The Happening begins with promise, but unfortunately descends into an incoherent and unconvincing trifle. I was surprised to see, though, that despite those reviews at the time, it only cost $48 to $60 million to make, and actually made around $163 million at the box office. So, despite the reputation, it actually did turn a solid profit.
Yeah, like you said when it first came out. I mean, I remember seeing the trailer for The Happening.
Yeah.
But I guess I wasn't one of those that was pumped to see it, but I do remember a lot of people at that time like, oh my God, there's this new movie coming out called The Happening. It looks pretty intense. Like, we're all going to go see it. I do remember, you know, walking around school, people talking about it. So it does make sense. All right, going into We Bought a Zoo. It is directed by Cameron Crowe, award-winning filmmaker and journalist known for Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Say Anything, Jerry Maguire, and Almost Famous. His reputation has taken a hit in recent years, though with projects like Vanilla Sky and Aloha. The film stars Matt Damon, Scarlett Johansson, and Thomas Hayden Church.
And yeah, so kind of like we alluded to at the beginning here, We Bought a Zoo did receive mixed to positive reviews at the time. It currently has a 65% on Rotten Tomatoes, so definitely much higher than The Happening. The site's critical consensus is, We Bought a Zoo is a transparently cloying effort by director Cameron Crowe, but Matt Damon makes for a sympathetic central character. Despite okay reviews, though, the movie has had its reputation kind of morph in recent years. I don't know what the pinpoint for that is, but I've definitely noticed it. Like, you know, people make fun of it in internet content, like we said, when it comes to, like, even it's like the high is like Jimmy Kimmel at the Oscars, like, and then you just see like memes and like jokes about it all the time. So yeah, it kind of has turned into like a really cheesy, cliche, goofy movie in people's eyes, despite the reviews being, I mean, relatively solid at the time. And then this one cost $50 million to make, and it brought in 120. So, you know, I guess you could say this went anywhere from breaking even to turning a small profit, but either way, nothing crazy. Yeah, kind of unsurprising. I mean, it's a big cast. It's like an odd story. Like, I don't even really know how well like a lot of like live action family dramas do at the box office. So this might have been a bit of a gamble. I think they were like, well, Matt Damon's here. He's gonna bring in the tickets.
Yeah.
And they were like, not really.
And it's based on a true story, right?
Yes. It is, yeah. Benjamin
Loosely.
Mee, is that the character's name? Yeah,
Yeah,
basically did the same
Benjamin
thing.
Mee is a real person. Yeah, but I don't think
Yeah.
it went to a T as maybe the real story went. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I think it's still open. I know it's in England, so I know they made the character American for this.
No,
Yeah, I
okay,
don't know. Maybe it's still open. Who knows?
maybe good for them. But yeah, very similar numbers though as far as the cost
Yeah.
compared to the box office make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Both of these.
I guess I don't. I guess I would have expected that the happening, like the negative word of mouth, would have impacted that box office a lot more. But it is like it's funny on paper that a movie that came out 3 years prior, made for around the same budget, made over $40 million more than a movie that has Matt Damon, Scarlett Johansson in it. So it kind of just goes to show you, I think, how powerful marketing can be. And The Happenings was very good. I'll never forget that trailer moment where they did a tease of the guy laying in front of I don't know what you call it, those big lawnmowers. He just lays in front of it and lets it run him over. But then the trailer cuts right before it does. And you're like, oh my God. So
Yeah.
I was like, I got to see that.
I was just going to say, yeah, I remember in the trailer watching like the bodies, the construction workers fall off the building,
Creepy.
wondering what's going on. Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, kind of getting the movie facts out of the way, I say let's just get into it. I think let's start, Keith, by discussing the general pros and cons of both of these in more detail so we can kind of start to figure out which we want to definitively say is better. So where should we start? You want to start with a pro, a con? Which movie? I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah. Where do we start? I guess we could let's start with The Happening. I watched these movies in the order of watching The Happening first, and then I watched
Me too.
We Bought a Zoo second, so we could start with The Happening. As far as pros goes, starting off, obviously there's something in the air that's making people want to commit suicide. They all pause, they start walking backwards, they start repeating themselves, they're not making sense, it's taking over the brain. I'm like, oh, maybe it's some sort. I'd never seen The Happening all the way through, so I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was going to be the wind and the plants and
the plants
whatever
fighting back.
Yeah, the plants fighting back. I thought it was going to be some sort of, as like people thought in the movie, some sort of like terrorist or virus, some sort of attack. So I was interested. Right. Like, I think it did kind of it did hook me, I would say, in the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll get into the cons in a minute. But I'll keep going with the pros. It did hook me. The cast was good. You have Wahlberg, Zooey Deschanel, John Leguizamo. I'm trying to think of anybody else in it. I mean, those are the main.
Those are the mains, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, maybe this might be fun. This might be a fun watch. I had high hopes, but very quickly. I mean, do you want to jump into the cons now, or let you talk about your pros, Matthew? Let me jump to you.
Because I would agree with that. I think one of the main pros of this is the opening. And it sounds like the critics at the time agreed. It's like, this is a strong premise. I think it opens pretty strong, I would say, from, even though the acting is really bad in that first scene where it's the two girls in Central Park, like very weird acting. But it's still, despite that, a good scene where it kind of leads to like her looking around, seeing all of a sudden how everybody in Central Park has stopped moving. It's like, that's creepy by itself. And then her friend, committing suicide. It's a horrifying opening, and then that leads to the construction site. I like how the movie always has like what time it is at the bottom whenever they move locations to kind of show like, cool. We were in like the COVID pandemic it's still up and down. Like, so you could basically say for the better part of 4 years now. It was crazy that like something like this happened in the span of 24 hours, and I like that we had that ticking clock the whole time to kind of watch it spread and how quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then like going into the construction worker stuff. And that leads into what I would say I think is Mark Wahlberg's best moment in the movie. I think I like him in the opening scene as the teacher where he's kind of doing the lesson about the bees and kind of, like in a weird way, it's like, oh, he kind of seems like kind of a fun teacher. You get why these students might like him and engage with him. It's weird that it's like the only scene that he seems like an actual actor in. But I would say after that scene, it slowly goes downhill, and then it goes from like a slow fall down the hill to like a very rapid fall down the hill. But yeah, so my pros would be the beginning, and then I don't know, I guess like I would scatter some pros throughout there. I think there's some good imagery in this movie, some really freaky imagery.
I was going to say that
One that I vividly remember on this second watch, going all the way back to probably whenever I first watched it. It must have been in 2009 after it was available on HBO, like I said. I never forgot the shot of John Leguizamo like looking up in the car whenever he gets to Providence and like seeing like the little slit in the top of the car, kind of implying,
Yeah.
uh-oh, we're vulnerable now. And then like the wide shot of the car stopping and then just immediately flooring it, watching them fly through the windshield after hitting a tree, and then him like walking out of the car and then ending up doing what he does. I mean, just a horrifying sequence. It's very effective. And it's like, you don't give a shit about this character. Like, in fact, like, pretty bad character, I would say. But you still, like, feel a sort of way because I think it's shot so well. And there's multiple examples of that throughout the movie, like some really well-shot moments.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you pointed out, there were some really creepy moments in it. I mean, like you said, the guy getting run over by the lawnmower, the people falling off the buildings. And, like, I would say some of the best acting in the movie was from just, like, extras or like just quick side characters.
Yes,
they actually had some like really good like the construction worker that saw that witnessed the bodies falling, and he was like crying and like freaking out, panicking. He gave one of the best performances of the movie, I would say.
Yeah.
And you get some other side characters at the diner whenever they're in that small town in Pennsylvania, and they're all kind of
the guy that owns the nursery that just really loves hot dogs, I guess.
Yeah, that was funny. That was weird.
Like,
you guys like hot dogs?
Did you bring the mustard?
Mustard?
You have Jeremy Strong from Succession, an early role from him as the private that stops them in the road and tries to kind of rally everybody. Whose response whenever they're like, the road shut down back there too, he just goes, cheese and crackers.
I started laughing at that.
So funny. But yeah, so there definitely are. I mean, The Happening is a movie that is much maligned, but it has objective pros in it, I think.
Yeah.
And to kind of, I guess, try and keep the format of the last time we did this, Keith, I think now let's go into some initial pros for We Bought a Zoo. So what would you say is your main one for this one? Because again, it's weird. Like it's a movie that looks really good. It's competently made. It's just, I don't know. Like, and maybe you disagree. I just think it's kind of bland. That's not the worst thing in the world. But yeah. So what would you say is like maybe like one or two of the biggest pros of this one?
I would say the performances are better. You could say than The Happening. Yeah, Matt Damon is great, but there's definitely some like super cliche moments. Cookie cutter moments, like you pointed out earlier. This movie is definitely a cookie cutter movie. I mean, it's one of those, you have the obvious, okay, one parent died X amount of time ago. And now the kids are, distraught from it. The dad's dealing with the grief as well, or the mom's dealing with grief if it's another situation. And now they got to move because of whatever, the kid's going through troubles at school. You've seen that beginning in so many movies. And
it's just such a leap. It's just the kid gets expelled, and that like starts a path of having to move, I guess, just to a different house, which then leads them to buying a zoo. It's an interesting movie to track.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's why they left. I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess I'm supposed to be pointing out pros, right? So yeah, I mean, the performances are better. I do think there's some good heartfelt moments in it, for sure.
Yeah.
I would say overall, this movie, I would say, is a good family movie. Like, it's something like a mom and dad can put on with their kids at the house, and like they're all gonna have a good time with it. They're gonna feel good about it at the end. It's got a nice happy ending to it. So that's what I'll say about the pros for We Bought a Zoo.
Yeah, I think the performances across the board are better, but I do like, I call them the zoo crew. I like Scarlett Johansson. And then I like those side characters that kind of pop up occasionally. There's like enough personality there, which is like makes them fun to watch, and you're kind of like, look at this little ragtag family.
Yeah.
So I like that. And then the other pro that came to mind while watching it is because I had written down a point for us to talk about in both The Happening and We Bought a Zoo, and that was chemistry between the leads, specifically romantic chemistry. And I thought Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel had quite possibly none, until maybe like the final scenes. You're like, oh, I guess that was cute, but your chemistry is really bad. And then Matt Damon and Scarlett Johansson's is like, it's better, but still it's a little weird. And then at the end, it feels very abrupt. And then also he looks like he's 50 and she's like 25. So that's also a thing. It's like, okay. I feel like for fucking 20 years, that was Scarlett Johansson's thing, is they just put her in movies to be really young, and her love interests were like 50-year-old men.
Yeah. And another weird thing about that story, and I know it's based on a true story, so I don't know how accurate it was to the real life guy, but they said the mom died 6 months ago. Only 6 months ago. And then the brother, who I actually really enjoy the performance. I love Thomas Hayden Church. I love him in almost everything he's in. So shout out to him. He was great as the accountant brother that was trying to give him advice. He was hilarious in it. But the brother's like, man, you got to get back out there, little brother. It's only been 6 months, and then he meets Scarlett Johansson at the zoo, and he's like, I think you're really hot, but like, I'm not gonna hit on you.
Well, it's weird because they kiss at the end. He acknowledges that he liked it and that he wants to do it again, and then the next scene is him taking his kids to see where he met their mom and saying how she's the most beautiful woman she's ever met. And some people are gonna say that like, well, of course, but I'm just saying, like, the editing of the movie made the moments weird. Obviously, I understand that he's still in love with his, unfortunately, now deceased wife, and he wants to kind of start to move on and show his kids these moments. It's just so funny that it goes from, like, one scene to the other. It's just goofy. I'm not saying it's unrealistic, but it is kind of goofy. Yeah. But anyway, before I get too negative again, the pro that I was getting at in terms of chemistry and for We Bought a Zoo is I actually quite like the kid chemistry. I thought the Elle Fanning and then the Matt Damon's son, I thought theirs was pretty cute. It felt kind of realistic, like young love. And I will say, I think the most heartwarming moment, at least for me on this watch, again, only the second time I've seen it, was whenever he does take that 20 seconds of courage and say that he loves her, and her reaction, it's just so cute. It's just very nice. So I was like, that's a nice little pro. But it also made me laugh thinking about that as the pro, because you have Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel, and then you have Matt Damon and Scarlett Johansson. And like on paper, you think like that sounds like that could be interesting. And it's in both cases not really. It's just these young kids that are way more interesting and better.
Yeah, I would say the kids and We Bought a Zoo put on really good. Actually, the kid in The Happening put on a pretty good performance too.
Yeah. That's true. So there's a little bit of connective tissue there. Yeah.
Yeah, like the little girl We Bought a Zoo, she was so funny. And then, the son, I can't remember the son's name, but I do think that Matt Damon and the son did have some good acting moments together. Like they had some good, hashed out type fights. But like you said, they do kind of become corny after a while. There's like two fights that were exactly the same. Like, this is your dream. You're only just made me do this because it's what you want to do, and blah blah. And you had like 2 or 3 fights that were the same exact fight. Like, all right, we get it. You're pissed off.
All right, well, here's what we're doing. I think we're talking about pros, but I think every time we've been talking about pros, we start to lead into cons. So I'm thinking maybe let's switch to cons, because we will be like negative, but maybe the opposite will happen. Maybe as we're being negative, we'll also remember some of the positives too, to kind of keep it balanced. But let's move to the cons here. So let's switch back to The Happening. Yep. And this is like such a weird question to ask, because there's so much odd and weird about the movie. But like, can you pinpoint one main con about it? Or is it just like a bunch of small ones?
Yeah, it is kind of hard to say, because I would say there's probably like 2 or 3 issues that are tied. Like the cutting was really awkward in it, I thought.
Yeah.
The acting was horrible.
Yes.
All around. And not just the acting, I guess the writing was horrible. Like there's just one line that you knew was coming. It's like, hasn't this line been in every other movie? You pointed out the intro with him being the science teacher. I did think that was okay. For some reason,
it's good compared to the rest, I think.
Yeah, I just couldn't imagine him as a science teacher.
Well, he's talked about that. He's been in interviews saying like one of the reasons he took the role is because he wasn't playing a cop or a criminal in it. He was like, someone wanted me to play a science teacher. I thought it was different. But I think what he should have asked himself is, can I play a science teacher? And the answer is probably no, and there's a reason for that.
Dude, I laughed so hard during that scene. He's like, Josh, are you not interested in science?
Oh, the iconic line. Come on, guys. Take an interest in science. Like, what?
And then, like you said, his chemistry with Zooey Deschanel was so weird.
Yeah, it's almost like hard to call it bad. I think the better word is just weird. Like, I don't know what they were going for. It's just weird.
Yeah. I didn't know if it was supposed to be like that, because John Leguizamo's character calls out that he doesn't trust her, right? like as his
He's
best
very
friend.
weird around her, and that train scene too. He looks like he hates her. she's like, why does this guy hate me?
Well, I think he does. Remember, he's like, dude, I saw.
Well, you're right. He definitely doesn't trust her for sure.
Yeah, he's like, dude, I saw her at your wedding. She's not that type, dude. She's not the type to commit and all that kind of stuff. Like trying to talk his best friend out of his marriage, pretty much.
Meanwhile, this guy's like letting his wife catch a later train. Which
I know that was weird. I guess they just didn't want to pay another actress. I guess.
Yeah, they're like, we can't afford it. Shit.
We also have to kill you off like a third of the way through the movie, so you're gonna go find that wife.
Leguizamo does not get a lot of screen time in this puppy. Yeah, he's not around for that long. Because Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel have to become surrogate parents. But yeah, I think kind of going back to it, I think you nailed the main cons. I think the main ones are the acting and the writing. It's just, like I talked about, it's all over the place. You're going from like good individual scenes, like I think like the hecticness of some of those early scenes, like the train gets derailed, they have to stop the train, they've lost contact with everyone, then they have to go to like the small diner, then like everybody's rushing out, like there's safety X amount of miles away. Like some of that stuff like felt really like that seems realistic. That's kind of interesting. I'm kind of hooked, like you said. But then we're just like going back and forth between individual scenes like that with like these really gruesome, like hard to watch scenes of these people doing these things to themselves, and you're like, okay, I mean, I guess that kind of goes in line. That's why people would be scared. But then you cut to some guy in his greenhouse, like in the middle of a pandemic or an epidemic in this case. I don't know what you would say. Just like, do you guys like hot dogs? I'm trying to pack as many as I can. They give you so much protein. They're great. Who doesn't love hot dogs? Oh, honey, did you grab the mustard? It's like, it's just so jarring. And it's like, I could buy into the camp I was laughing during. I think it's what makes the movie watchable and fun. But if we're talking about like what's objectively good about it, it is such a jarring, like jumping and cutting, like you said, going from these gruesome death scenes to like these weird jokes or just awkward, I don't know, cringy moments. Like Spencer Breslin getting shotgunned in the chest is hysterical.
Yeah, Curtis from Santa Claus.
Yeah, just because, oh my God, in his break moment, whenever like Mark Wahlberg is trying to talk down the guy in that barricaded house, and you kind of understand both sides, and they're about to walk away, and then Spencer Breslin's just like, no, fuck you, bitches. We're trying to get food for Jess. And I'm like, why? He's talking about Jess like she's his best friend. And he starts kicking the door. And just gets shot in the chest. I mean, it's hilarious, but I don't think we're supposed to think it's hilarious. So
bad.
It's just a whiplash of a movie with all like the different tones happening, I think might be its biggest issue. But again, that's the weird thing about bad movies like this. It's like, it's its biggest issue, but I think it's what made me laugh the most. So
yeah.
In retrospect, I kind of, I don't know. Maybe I liked it. I don't. It's weird. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I was having a good time with it, just from all the funny moments that weren't supposed to be funny. I know, like Mark Wahlberg's lines were just, and the way he delivered them,
they're unbelievable.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like he was almost crying the entire movie, and
yeah.
He was never like he never had like a normal, I mean, except for the beginning, but then. Once the happening starts happening, he starts like, what's happening? And then he starts like kind of blubbering. He's like, it's hitting people in groups. We have to split up. It's like, oh my God, just have one normal sentence.
And it doesn't help that every character around him, like a random side character will walk up to Zooey Deschanel or like John Leguizamo and they'll just be like, hey, Mark Wahlberg over there. I don't even know the guy, but that might be the most resilient guy I've ever seen. And then it'll cut to like Mark Wahlberg like trying to do something like important, I guess, and then it'll cut back to Zooey Deschanel and she'll smile and be like, yeah, he is resilient. But then you're right, the entire movie he's like on the verge of tears and just sounds so confused. It's like he doesn't seem that resilient. Yeah. And of course it like just peaks in the moment whenever they need to split up into groups and like they hear parts of their group have been affected, and like Zooey Deschanel's like, I hear all these gunshots, but let's go help them. I'm like, what the fuck are you gonna do to help them? And then Mark Wahlberg's response is just give me a freaking second. Oh, yeah. And he just says it over and over again.
If you would just give me a second to think. And she's like,
about to cry.
Yeah. Zooey Deschanel gave like just the most lazy lines ever. Like, we don't have time to think. Come on, we have to go. We don't have time. Come on, Jess.
You can't stand by and let them do this to themselves. I'm like, they already did.
Do you not hear the gunshots? You know how this
Yeah.
works by now. I was gonna just say before we jump back to We Bought a Zoo. What do you think about the old lady scene? I thought that was one of the weirder moments of the movie. But like, there was a moment in it that I actually kind of liked it. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, it's kind of creepy. She's really kind of creepy, and she just cut
like
off
the general vibe.
Yeah, just her kind of vibe. Like, she was cut off from communication. Right. She didn't even know what was happening because she didn't have TV or phone or anything like that. And she's like, "Don't tell me anything." And then whenever she keeps accusing them of trying to steal or kill her and all that, she was really evil looking.
Yeah, I thought she was really good in the movie. I'm not familiar. I don't think I'm familiar with that actress, but I thought that was a good performance. Like, and whenever you get weird moments like that, which are also weird through the editing and the acting from other characters, that's where it starts to make you wonder. So, is like the tone of this movie intentional? Like, this woman is so strange. So does that explain why Zooey Deschanel and Mark Wahlberg are also like acting in a certain? Like, I don't know. It's weird for sure. But the old woman stuff was pretty interesting. I think they're probably trying to play on the whole paranoia aspect, and it is interesting to watch a movie like this after like the initial like kind of COVID pandemic, after what we all kind of went through and experienced over a long period of time, because I think, and the paranoia that comes out of it, because I think The Happening is trying to play on that too. This is a woman that you meet for 2 scenes, and then she overhears Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel whispering in her house, and her response is, "I hear what you're saying. I hear that you're trying to steal my things and kill me," and you're like, okay, I guess this is supposed to be representative of like the paranoia that comes from moments and like events like this. And I think the isolation aspect fed into that. So again, there's a lot of interesting premises and ideas, but then it's immediately ruined. Like I joked before, when she says something and you're like, oh shit, that's pretty fucking creepy. That's scary. Like, how are they going to navigate this? How are our characters trapped here? And then it just cuts to Mark Wahlberg like, what? No. That's his response to somebody saying that you're going to murder me.
No. And then he just closes the door.
To the plastic plant, too.
Yeah. I'm talking to a plastic plant. I'm still talking about it. I'm still doing it. What am I doing?
So stupid.
Yeah. That is a good point, though. I mean, like, you also have the guys who shot Curtis, or shot Spencer Breslin. They were like, they already kind of knew what was what was going on. They were like, don't let that air in here. Like, they already knew it was the air.
But with that, Keith, we got to switch back over to We Bought a Zoo. Another movie where I feel like it's hard to pinpoint what, like, again, I'll ask you the same question. Does it have one main issue, or is it like 2 or 3 things, like with The Happening? Like,
I would say like the chemistry with Matt Damon as a dad and the kids wasn't bad. I would say it was.
No, I thought
it was pretty good, and then maybe his interactions with the zookeepers were fine as well. And then his brother, Thomas Hayden Church. I think the chemistry was there for me, I guess. At least I didn't find it as bad as Zooey Deschanel and Mark Wahlberg. And like I said earlier, I don't think the performances were that bad either. But there was, I think you nailed it earlier. I think maybe the main thing about it is just, it was just so predictable and cookie cutter. Like, you just know what's going to happen. You know, he's going to have an interest in Scarlett Johansson as soon as she comes on screen. He's like, oh, yep, they're going to kiss later. Oh, you know the son's going to be mad about it for half the movie, or maybe more than half the movie, and then he's going to be cool with it by the end of the movie. And you know that everybody's going to be one big happy family by the end. It was just predictable. I guess that was the main con.
Yeah, so then maybe going off that point, I would say the main con is like, while watching this, I think the biggest con of this one is like, I don't know if it justified existing. Like, why was this made? I understand it's based on a true story, so did Cameron Crowe read that story and go, oh, that would be fun to make? Right. I mean, it in a weird way, it feels like they made it just because, like, kids like animals, so kids will go see this and parents will have to drag them to it. Like, is that the only reason you made this? Because I can't find anything else in there that would justify making a movie that cost $50 million to make. It's like, I don't know what you, the filmmaker, found interesting about it, because you certainly didn't make an interesting movie. So why'd you make it?
Right?
I don't know. Yeah.
That's just one of those things that always baffled me about Hollywood. It's like what decides, what really decides for a movie to get greenlit? Some movies are obviously they should be greenlit, but then there's there's obviously movies that oh my God, why did they make that? And then there's probably great scripts sitting out there that just don't get recognized for whatever
they have
reason.
the blacklist every year for that reason. And it's also funny because I think The Happening, like we've said, is like objectively worse. But I totally understand why they made that script. And it's not because M. Night Shyamalan was involved. I think like if he wasn't, if somebody read that, they'd be like, oh shit, yeah, we should make this.
Yeah.
We gotta make this. Who read We Bought a Zoo and was like, oh my God, this is the next big family comedy of the century? It's like, what? No. Like, there's just nothing that jumps off the page, and there's nothing that jumps out to you as the viewer while watching it. It is just, that's why I thought it might be kind of perfect for this, and I'm glad that you mentioned it whenever you were talking about movies, because it is just unoffensive, but I think kind of truly pointless, despite having some good scenes like we've talked about.
Well, yeah, and I mean, one other thing we can bring up with both these movies is that it starred two big A-listers as their leads, Mark Wahlberg and Matt Damon. What were they thinking? Like, what was Mark Wahlberg? Mark Wahlberg has given way better performances than what he did in The Happening. Sure. And then same with Matt Damon. Not saying Matt Damon gave a bad performance in We Bought a Zoo, but it wasn't one of his best, And these guys both did The Departed together, like we called out earlier in 2006, I think. So 2 years later, Mark does The Happening, and then 4 years later, Matt does this. It just makes you wonder, like, did they read these scripts? Like that? I don't know. Maybe sometimes, like, maybe in Matt Damon's instance, he just wants to go and just have fun. Maybe he just doesn't. He's not trying to do something super serious for a little bit. That. Which, nothing against that.
I also think maybe what we're getting at and why it's so hard for us to find like the main issues with something like We Bought a Zoo that doesn't even have a lot of positives to begin with. And so it's like, so if it doesn't have a lot of positives, it must have some negatives. I think what's hard is like, I think what they positioned as the main conflict ultimately wasn't as interesting, and they didn't spend enough time on it as maybe they intended. The way the movie starts, it's like, oh, it's going to be like a father-son kind of battling movies, Gotta make this kid come around. I have to help him get through what he's going through, and I have to get through it too, with the help of these like wacky side characters and my daughter that seems very well adjusted despite her age. And they do spend a decent amount of time on that, but once they get to the zoo, then it's like, the whole father-son relationship kind of falls by the wayside for most of the movie. But then what do they fill it with? They kind of just fill it with a lot of like generic comedy scenes of like characters falling over and falling into like sharp objects or like a spiky bush or something, or like an animal's like, look at this animal doing this wacky funny thing. Like, oh no, I gotta run away. But then they have glimmers of interesting stuff where like, you have this old tiger who's, really sick and in pain, but like not on death's door. And so it's this whole like kind of element of like, well, it's time to, I think, put this animal to rest. And that kind of jives with what Matt Damon's character is going through with just having lost his wife. So he's like very hesitant and resistant to doing that. And there's these very beautiful connections that like, I feel like in the hands of Pixar or something in like an animated format, that would have been the main kind of message, like kind of like how to let go and move on, tying that to like your family, but also these animals that are now becoming your new family. And every time it gets interesting, they just cut away and then do like a wacky thing with the side characters, or like they'll have like another fight that's the exact same fight between father and son. Like nothing really interesting is coming out. And then once they get to the climax of like the death of this animal story, they kill them off screen, and then we just move on with the rest of the movie and never address it. So it's like, I guess maybe as I'm talking, I realize maybe the con is, I don't know if this movie knows what its message is.
Yeah.
I don't think they figured it out on paper, and they certainly didn't figure it out while they were shooting it, because they never picked one. So none of them have an interesting payoff. Because he and the son fight, and then in the next scene, they're just kind of good. So it's like, but that's not the payoff. You skip the payoff. This is like the ending result of that action. So like there's no real payoffs here.
No. I think that's a really good point. It's almost like they titled it wrong or something. Like, was it really about the zoo? Yeah. Was it really about the zoo?
I really don't know.
Yeah, because they didn't really, like you said, they didn't really show a whole lot about the zoo. Like, it was just it was just in the background. Like, okay, we bought this land, and the stipulation is if you buy it, that you have to keep it a zoo and open it as a zoo. And it's like, okay, that's a okay idea, I guess. And then, like you said, they show the lion, the dying tiger. They show the grizzly bear moment. They have like 3 or 4, I guess you could call them bigger moments. They're not really that big of moments though. And then that's kind of it with the animals. So you really don't get a lot of really anything with the zoo besides the zookeepers fixing fences and stuff like that. Like, oh, we got to pass inspection for Ferris to come before opening day. And that was kind of the biggest conflict. And then Matt Damon's just writing checks the whole time. Like, well, we don't have this and don't have that. He's like, just go get it. Buy it. I'm footing the bill for everything. So there was no conflict with them having to get anything. He was just paying for it all.
And then his wife left him this ghost money. And he was like, I have enough now. And then they succeed and okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
cool.
Thomas Church is trying to talk him out of it the whole time. And then he's like, you know what, little brother? I'm with you now. You do what makes you happy.
Here's some fish. I bought you some fish to feed the damn animal. So, Keith, I think I know where you stand on this. What do you prefer? Do you prefer, like, a garbage movie that's, like, really bad? So, like, maybe, I don't know, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, would you rather watch a 2 out of 10? Or would you rather watch run-of-the-mill average 5 out of 10? What do you think that you enjoy more often?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it really goes to who I would be with watching these movies. Like, by myself, I would rather be watching, like, if I'm flipping through channels and The Happening is playing on channel 12 and then We Bought a Zoo is playing on channel 13, I'm probably going to, and I only have the choice between those 2 channels, I'm probably going to click on The Happening just because it has a little bit more of an entertaining value for me personally, just like I guess like the concept of it. And then I can also laugh at the horrible performances of Wahlberg and Deschanel and everybody else. Whereas We Bought a Zoo, I wouldn't want to watch that movie again by myself. I have no desire to put that on by myself ever again.
Right.
But that's a movie I would probably show my kids one day. Or if like, little cousins came over to the house, and, we need to put a movie on, I would put We Bought a Zoo on, and it would be a good one that everybody would enjoy.
Yeah. I've always been somebody, I hear what you're saying when it comes to like watching it with people or alone, but I feel like maybe my only difference is even if I'm alone, like I watched The Happening and I watched We Bought a Zoo alone this time around, and I just thoroughly enjoyed The Happening so much more. I think I've always been somebody that prefers a bad movie to a boring movie, because even in a bad movie, and of course there are exceptions, like a random example, a high profile like blockbuster movie, like the first Suicide Squad, the David Ayer one, I think is a very bad movie. That I just don't. That's not a movie I would ever like advocate to putting on shitty movie night, because I think it's bad. And I don't think it's fun. I just think it's bad at doing what it's doing, and that makes it very hard to watch and uninteresting. Whereas what M. Night Shyamalan and the team did with The Happening, I don't think is good, but I think it's interesting. I think there's promise there, and the things that make it bad are the same things that make it funny. The deliveries of every line are like awful most of the time, but they're so funny. It's like, I guess that shouldn't give it props, but that's more like interesting and more fun to watch for me than something like We Bought a Zoo, which is just like, I would say, a weak Cameron Crowe movie. And it's just like, okay, whenever the credits rolled on that, my only other pro was like, I thought the soundtrack and the music was good in this. But I'm like, that's all I can really say about it. All these actors have given better performances. Like there are infinitely better family dramas and family comedies. Like I said, by the end, both times I've watched it, I just don't know why they made it.
Yeah, it's pointless. Whereas The Happening,
I don't know what attracted anybody to that project.
Yeah, I know. So weird. And that was 2010, right? So Scarlett Johansson had already done Iron Man 2, or no, she's probably about to do Iron Man 2.
Just started, I guess.
Yeah. And then, Matt Damon was in the middle of a ton of movies in that time period. So, it's so random. I don't know.
Yeah, it is wild, but I do think this was the perfect pairing. And also, like last week, Keith, I want to end off, before we put in our official votes, even though I think I know where we're going, but I think it would be fun to say, are there any other funny moments or funny quotes from either movie that we haven't said yet?
Oh, man. I feel like there's got to be some from The Happening that we missed.
I alluded to it. I still think the usage of the mood ring, even by 2008 standards, felt very out of date. And they never really get around to it. It's just Mark Wahlberg wears it the entire movie. It seems like it's usually blue, which I think at the end they say means he's feeling at peace, which feels weird based on the circumstances they're in.
Mm-hmm.
But they try and have these big moments where he like offers it to a child and is like, "Oh, it's yellow. You're about to laugh. I'm going to make you laugh." And then they laugh for no reason. You're like, that's weird. And then like he and Zooey Deschanel are talking about like his weird moves to hit on her using a mood ring. And she's like, "I didn't mean I'm in love with you. It means I'm horny." And then her line afterwards, she's like, "And you liked that." And he's like, "I did. I didn't know." What the fuck is happening?
Dude, he was so weird.
The mood ring in general was so funny.
Yeah. And when the old lady's like, "Well, who's chasing who?" And they're like, "What?" He's like, "Somebody, in the relationship, there's always one person that's chasing the other one. Who is it?" And then Matt Damon just like raises his hand like a little boy in a classroom. He's like, "It's me."
And then Zooey Deschanel looks like she's never loved anybody more. She's like, "Oh, my husband. I love him."
Yeah. Oh, there was also whenever she's like, "I went and got dessert with my coworker."
Oh my
after.
God. How have we not talked about the weird, like, not cheating subplot, but like the subplot that like teeters on it for some reason?
Yep.
This is their way to, I guess, explain why she's been distant, is that she got tiramisu once with a coworker
named Joey,
she was staying
who has
late,
her number.
and then just relentlessly will not stop calling her.
Yep.
And I guess this has made her distant? Like, it is odd. And then she finally tells him, he's like, "We're about to die. I have to come clean." And then he's like, his response to that, like in the face of death and danger, is like, "I can't believe you lied to me."
Yeah.
What's going on?
I also like 5 minutes before that, they're in the car and Joey calls and he's like, he looks at her phone. He goes, "Who's Joey?" And she's like, "Nobody." He's like, "Oh." And then he just looks away.
They
doesn't
have
question
to acknowledge it. Oh, God. I also wrote down that I love the John Leguizamo line, which is, I guess, supposed to be his like reconciliation with Zooey Deschanel whenever...
Oh, yeah.
Whenever he's about to go to Providence to find his wife, and he's like, "Well, that car only has room for one, so Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel, take my daughter with you." And then Zooey Deschanel's like, "Of course we'll take care of her." And then all of a sudden, John Leguizamo gets more serious than anybody ever has in a movie and just goes, "Don't take my daughter's hand unless you mean it." Like, in front of the daughter, too.
Yeah. And Deschanel's eyes just like widen up.
Whoa, holy shit.
He just didn't like her at all. He hated her.
Just didn't like her. Well, I guess hopefully he came around to her before he flung out that windshield, because now she's his daughter's adoptive parent, and now they're having another baby. Yep. Pregnancy reveal.
Hell yeah. Yeah, as Mark Wahlberg is like weirdly walking down the street, like still looking like he's about to cry. They never
kiss or like touch each other in the movie, it feels like. It almost feels like they recognize they didn't have chemistry either.
Yeah.
His response to like off-screen hearing that she's pregnant is just to like shake her hand, it looks like.
I don't think they kissed once. I don't think they ever kissed once.
I don't think so.
They like did some weird side hug. It's like they're friends. Like they're not even married.
All right, Keith, what about We Bought a Zoo? Are there any funny lines or moments that we've missed? I'm trying to think here. I do like the weird, if we're speaking about like weird dramatic moments, I like when the zoo inspector is just like, "I can't even believe that you could call this place a home." And then Matt Damon's response is, "We can, like this. This is our home." And then it just like cuts back to the inspector, whose face is kind of like, even his face says like, "That's a weird thing to say to me." Weird response to my comment.
Oh, I thought the grizzly bear scene was so stupid. Whenever
oh my God.
He walks up the hill and he has the dart gun and he just keeps walking up to the grizzly bear and he's like, "Well, you're not gonna be able to do anything, Mr. Grizzly Bear, because I got my gun." And then the grizzly bear hits the gun out of his hand and he's like, "Whoa."
His response to that is like, "Whoa, Jiminy Crickets." Yeah. I can't believe that happened.
Cheese and crackers. Yeah.
Cheese and crackers. The world's about to end. Oh my God. The grizzly bear scene is such a perfect example of like what the movie focuses on as opposed to what it should be focusing on. Do we really need this weird subplot where Buster, the fucking bear, escapes? I don't know. Which results in Matt Damon like, we have to build him a bigger enclosure. He looks so free out there. And then, like, at the end of the movie, it shows a glimpse of, like, the bigger enclosure, and it's, like, fucking 5 feet extra long. It's, like, fantastic. This is the big payoff we needed.
Yeah, did they even explain how he got out?
No, I don't think so, which is concerning. I didn't think about that. How did he get out? It's a fucking bear.
I don't know.
I guess nobody was working that day. They were all at that bar that they're constantly at during the day.
I know they're a bunch of drunks running a zoo. That's why I would not pass an inspection.
Fucking like Tiger King. That's why everybody's getting their limbs chopped off because all the workers are just drunk at this bar that's like on the zoo property.
Yeah, leaving doors unlocked.
All right, Keith. Well, before we finally close out here, let's definitively say it. Again, I think I know where we're going. Could be wrong. I want to try and phrase this the same way we did last week when talking about the Roadhouses. We have The Happening versus We Bought a Zoo. I don't want to say which is best, which is worse, but out of a shitty movie night, how about we'll say it this, because I think it's kind of where we've been going as we've been talking. Which is the movie that you think should be on regular rotation when hanging out with friends doing a shitty movie night? Let's say that.
Oh, that's easy. The Happening.
Okay, I agree. So now, if we want to make it a little bit more difficult, I don't know, like, maybe I'll leave it to you. Like, which one do you think is better? Which one did you think was more entertaining? Like, I don't know. Where do you kind of land on that? Because, if I'm saying better, I guess We Bought a Zoo is better, but it's not like an emphatic, like, I'm not excited about it. I'm saying I guess to preface it.
Yeah.
But, like, I honestly think The Happening wins in most categories here. I think it should be, like, a shitty movie night staple, or just, like, a bad movie night with friends. I think it should be on there. I think it's more enjoyable. I think you're going to have a ton of fun with this.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think this is kind of like, I don't know. I'm surprised that I laughed this much on a second watch after all these years. Like, I think this was a perfect movie for this episode.
I have not laughed that hard at a movie that wasn't supposed to be funny in a long time.
I like that.
So
that makes it perfect for this.
Yeah. I was laughing my ass off out loud, and I was just like, why am I laughing? This movie's about people killing themselves because
I know, that's why it's
plants.
So weird.
And I'm laughing so hard at everything that's happening. Huh?
Yeah, it's wild that they made this movie funny somehow. It really is.
So yeah, but, as far as like you said, it's it would definitely be a staple for a shitty bad movie night, whatever you want to call it. Whereas We Bought a Zoo, I think it's just more of a, like you said, a pointless movie and a bad movie for those actors to choose, but not so much a bad movie. It's just a good family movie to put on if you're with kids, you know?
Yeah.
I
agree.
Where that one...
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's who that would appeal to. So...
It's like, if we're bringing in, like, our last year's picks with John Carter and Ambulance, I would say, like, a good shitty movie night would be John Carter and The Happening.
Yeah.
Now, could Ambulance squeeze in there? I think definitely more so than We Bought a Zoo. Whereas, although I'm stoked we picked We Bought a Zoo for this, I don't know I don't think that would be good for the rotation. If you're watching a few, like, bad movies on purpose, I think people would kind of get a little bit bored with that one. Maybe a little bit too slow.
Yeah.
A little too predictable. Whereas these other ones are like anything, like they're far from predictable. So I think in the shitty movie night kind of Hall of Fame, The Happening's got to be up there.
Oh, for sure. And I think we need to do a couple more shitty movie nights, and then maybe like do like a shitty movie night, like I don't know, some kind of tournament at the end of like one of the other episodes. We take the other winners and compare them later on.
I want to watch John Carter again, I'll say that. So
yeah,
I'd be down to watch these again. I'd watch The Happening again. All right, well, there you go. Shitty movie night round 2 is over. The Happening comes out on top over We Bought a Zoo. I'm not surprised, but you know what? I'm glad I watched both of them.
Same.
Very happy we did this episode. But before we get to our outro, Keith, let's do some Arnie's Podcast Awards. Part of our show where we take anything from the thing we just talked about, in this case, the things we just talked about. It could be positive, negative, or something in between. It just has to be something that we feel deserves an award for whatever reason. So, Keith, we have a lot of options today. What are you thinking? What are we thinking? So my award is going to be for the funniest use of green screen, because this was one of the hardest moments that I've laughed in quite a while. And it's one of those things, like in 2008, it's not something I would have noticed, but I noticed it here. And also, I don't know why the characters are showing this, but when they're in that diner crowded after the train stops, like one woman, you just hear go, "Oh my God, look at this!" And then all the characters gather around her first generation iPhone, and she shows green screen footage of, kind of ties in, of a zookeeper inside an enclosure.
Yes,
that's right. Does the whole happening thing and lets his arms get eaten off by tigers or lions. I can't remember what they were. But I was just dying laughing at the green screen. It's clearly just a guy standing on a green screen. He's not in a zoo or anything like that. I was just laughing at how egregiously bad it was. But then, like, as I was laughing, I started laughing at the fact that, like, some woman in the middle of the most crowded diner of all time would go, "Oh my God, everyone, look at this." And it's just a video of a man getting gruesomely murdered. Like, why
I was
would
laughing
you
at that too.
Show these to people?
Yeah. I know she was watching it so calmly too. She's like,
"Yeah,
wow, it's really going around, isn't it?" And everybody's like, "Yeah, it is."
Yeah, so dumb.
She was just smiling at her phone, like, that's interesting. And I like how the lion too, like, took off his arm with like there was no ripping. It was just like, it was one little like paw motion, and then his arm just easily came off.
It just fell off. Yeah,
it fell off.
It was wanting to come off.
I've given out this award before. I think it was not that long ago, maybe a couple episodes ago. The Best Cameo Award. And I think that goes to Mr. J.B. Smoove as the realtor.
Ooh.
And We Bought a Zoo. For some reason, I really liked that scene whenever he was driving them around, like talking about the houses and everything like that. And he's like just talking all chill, like trying to appeal to the kids and say like, "Hey, this house is gonna be cool for you guys in this kind of way." And then the little girl was like, "Our mom just died." He's like, "Oh, dang." And he was kind of just,
"Dang, that's
he had
crazy."
to kind of roll with it. Yeah. And then Matt Damon asked him, he's like, "Wait, how long you been doing this for?" He's like, "First day.
Yeah, it really felt like he was supposed to be a bigger character based on how they set him up. And I laughed so hard at the ending whenever like the zoo is open and it just like cuts to, I think they're looking at like the lion enclosure, and you see JB Smoove with his kids and he's just like pointing, they're all pointing at the lions, but JB Smoove never turns around. It's clearly him. But you hear him talking. I just thought it was funny, like he returns at the end for like a cameo where it's just the back of his head.
Yeah, all you just hear him say, "Solomon the lion."
Look at the lions. Yeah, it's like, oh, glad you're back. It's so funny. Well, with that, let's go ahead and close out. Thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you hit that follow button so you never miss our upcoming content. Also, if you wouldn't mind sharing us with a friend, we would appreciate that to continue to grow our show. Please leave us reviews as well. Even if you don't want to write anything, leaving us a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever your podcast really does help us out. At The Arnies is our social, and thearnies.media is the website. We'll be back next Tuesday with another episode. Not going to make any promises. Keith and I have been throwing around some ideas again, since we're going to be just the two of us for a little bit longer. We were thinking, we are diehard Fast and Furious fans. Maybe we could do an episode where we kind of talk about our undying love for the franchise, but more importantly, can we predict Fast 11? So we'll see what happens. It's something we've been thinking about because, man, we've been hitting the drawing board. What the hell's going to happen? What the hell's going to happen? The Rock's back. Jason Momoa is a menace. The devil, I'm trying to remember. Dante, I think was his name. He tried to kill Vin Diesel and his young son.
Yeah.
What's going to happen in the next one?
John Cena is the brother who may or may not come back. Yes, he died, but no one really dies in this franchise. We figured out.
Now you understand the point. Now you understand. Yeah. This is why we have to predict what will happen, because there are so many variables.
Yep. It'd be a fun one. So we'll see. And lastly, want to hear from you, so please send us a message on Instagram at The Arnies or email us thearniesmedia@gmail.com. What did you all think of the happening? And We Bought a Zoo. Anything you say, we'll read on the show and react to it live on the latest episode.
That's right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this one. We'll catch you next time. Have a great weekend. I don't know what to leave you with. I think I just got to go with my Mark Wahlberg again, my favorite